inhlekani kwalani hina hi tshama le ka Kruger National Park hi ta ringeta ngopfu ku komba swiharhi swi tele kwalani ku na tiyingwe la ku na tinghala ku na tihoji ku na tihongoni ku na tinhundla ku na tindlopfu ku na tinyarhi hinkwaswo hi ta ringeta ku kuma namuntlha n'wina mi ta yi vutela swivutiso #Safari Live or questions@wildearth.tv loko wa tirhisa email. Good afternoon, everybody, and that was just a little Shangaan introduction for you, and the reason for that is that we are going to do a little bit of a test throughout the drive on how much Shangaan you have managed to pick up over your hours and years and decades of watching this broadcast of Wild Earth from here in the wilds of the Kruger National Park. I must apologize profusely that we are 13 minutes late. I'm sorry about that. We had a couple of issues with the satellites and things that are well above my pay grade, A, and B, my intellectual capacity. So, there it is. I hope you enjoyed that little Shangaan introduction. My name is James Hendry, and I will be your guide on this live afternoon game drive today here in the wilds of South Africa. On camera today we have Wiam, the wildebeest, who is sporting a cap older than Methuselah and some boots heavy enough to sink most ships. On the other vehicle we have the inimitable, irascible and highly enthusiastic Brent Leo Smith, and on camera with him Brian the Tall. The, what do they call themselves? B squared or B something? The square Bs, I don't know what they call themselves. The B team. That's what they call themselves. Yes, good point. And in the control room today we've got Kirsty McLennan Smith and Tara Dales in my ear for most of the afternoon. Excuse me, a small frog in the throat. Now, I'm just going to give you a little idea. The reason that we're going to do some Shangaan stuff is that part of South Africa has extremely rich wildlife heritage. We also have an extremely rich cultural heritage. There's a waterbuck over there. Wiam, Piva. There's a waterbuck in Shangaan. So while Wiam shows you the Piva over there, there are a couple of Piva, female Piva vansati, women Pivas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about South Africa in the deeps going from south to north. In the deep south, of course, the most obvious language, indigenous language spoken there is isiXhosa. And isiXhosa, can you say isiXhosa? isiXhosa. They are around the Cape, and into the southern Cape I suppose we'd have a lot of Afrikaans from the various communities that exist around Cape Town, and moving north from there of course we have the indigenous San languages, which are some of the most ancient languages left in human history, and we don't know how long they're actually going to last. Then moving a little bit to the east from there onto the Highveld, we have the Basotho, who live in the mountain fastnesses of the Drakensberg, and then off to the north of that the Tswanas, who are also Sotho speaking people, and they go into Botswana. And then away from that, close, if we come further east, we get onto the mountains there in the Drakensberg, and there are the Bapedi, and the Bapedi speak a language called Pedi, and Pedi is also a Sotho language. North of that we have the Vavenda, who speak a language totally unrelated to any other of the languages in South Africa, so that's a fascinating one. Then as we come further east, of course we have the Machangan, or the Vatsonga, and their language is, the Shangaan is the language that we speak here, and it's a kind of dialect of Tsonga, which is a much more widely spoken language that goes into the coastal plains of Mozambique. And then down, as we move further south down the coastal plain here, we have the Swazis at the southern end of the Kruger National Park, and the Ndebele, and then further south of there, of course, the iconic name of the AbaKwaZulu, the little children of the sky, and their iconic history borne by the great emperor Shaka Gatsezanga Khona. So that's a little bit of a cultural introduction to South Africa, and that's why we're going to be doing a bit of Shangaan today. Okay, here we go, and I must again just quickly apologize for being late, and we're on game drive. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's probably about 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to go just pop around the waterholes to start with and see if we can't find some elephants coming to drink on this very warm and very pleasant late winter, almost early spring afternoon. You're most welcome. Oh, and I only told you this in Shangaan, that this is an interactive drive, and should you wish to ask us any questions, we do like to hear from you. hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting, or questions at wildearth.tv if you want to ask us on the email. And they don't have to be questions, they can be any kind of comment that you have. And please remember, we love to know where you're from as well. So give us your name and tell us which part of this magnificent planet you happen to be sitting on right now, and maybe even tell us what you're doing. If you're at work, if you're at home, where you happen to find us and where we happen to be finding you. Make sure that I'm plugged in. Yes, I'm plugged in. We're now on the far eastern side of Djuma, and Djuma is the little piece of the Kruger National Park we're on. 900 hectares here and 600 to the west of us, called Arathusa, and we're on the far eastern boundary of Djuma at the moment, just checking for a few tracks. It's quite nice and open up here, and that's why we found those waterbuck, which like to hang around where it's a little bit more open so that they can see any potential threats coming along. Right, now, here is your first test, everybody. I'm going to tell you, we're going to go across to Brent, who has found himself an animal, and that animal's name in Shangaan is Ndlopfu, and I hope perhaps some of you know what that is. You're going to go across to Brent and see some Ndlopfu, and I will see you in just a little while. Yinkari Yintsongo.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on this sunset safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith, and I'm going to be your guide around the African bush for the next couple of hours. And on camera with me, I have Brian, and quite often together we're known as the Killer Bees. And that's because we've together found such fantastic sightings over the last couple of months that we've been here between Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves. So we're sitting with a nice little breeding herd of elephants, and they're a little bit wet. As you can see, they're quite dark, and that's probably because from where we've tracked them, they have been swimming in Sydney's dam. So we followed them. They're now on our western boundary, but it looks like they're just going to mill around here and feed. But what a fantastic way to start off this sunset safari, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy the little game James and I are going to be playing with you on the sunset safari. We're going to introduce our links in Shangaan so you guys can try work out what animals or what we are talking about. But for those of you who might be possibly new, can you believe we're sitting live next to a herd of African elephants, and you are seeing these animals at almost the exact same time that we are, and we're also interactive. So you're able to ask us, what tree is that elephant eating right now? And you can do that by emailing us on questions at wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. This is an adult female next to us here, and Brian's got the camera on at the moment, and she looks like to possibly still be lactating. You can see her mammary glands are still quite enlarged. Hello, old lady. Well, not too old, but definitely an adult female. And you can see there's quite a few different elephants behind. As if we go a little bit wider, yep, you can see, there we go. That little youngster there at the back is probably the lactating female that she is. Wasn't that wonderful? Did you hear that? And so they're moving off into the shade a little bit. Unfortunately, being on one of the busier roads, I'm just going to have to move the vehicle to let someone pass quickly. There it is again. Isn't that fantastic? And then we will carry on staying with these elephants. Big conversation going on there. Let's get around so we can have a look what they're talking about. there is quite harsh light at this time of the day, so we're just trying to get you into the best spot. Head forward. So, as I said, guys, unfortunately this is one of the main access roads, and we're about to have a very noisy tractor come past. But one must remember that these farm vehicles are what keep the roads in such good condition for being out here in the bush. So we do have to occasionally deal with a noisy tractor. And continuing on with our Shangaan words, we're going to show you the tractor very quickly. There we go. Oops. There we go. Got a little water bowser that will be used for fighting fires. And carrying on with the Shangaan words and African words and the multiple languages we have here, quite a lot of words which are new words for something like a tractor, which obviously didn't exist in the traditional language, does a lot to do with what noise it makes. So I love, and one of my favorite words from childhood is a tractor, and it's called a gunda gunda, because it gunda gunda goes. So there we go, a little bit more of a language lesson as the gunda gunda goes past us. But let's get back to these ellies. It looks like they're just resting a little bit in the shade. You can see, as I said, they all look quite dark at the moment, and I think they had a nice bathe and splash around in Sydney's waterhole, where we spent a wonderful few minutes this morning as Kudu came down to drink, and a lone buffalo popped out of nowhere. And it's not uncommon to see elephants doing this at this time of the day, after they've had a nice swim and drink, and it is quite hot. They will stand in small groups in shade, although if I was an elephant, I possibly wouldn't have chosen that smaller shade for that many ellies. But they're almost sort of, not snoozing as such, but resting. So a little bit of a sort of cat nap, so half asleep. Like that. And they're all together, and obviously quite strong connections in elephant breeding herds and family groups. And in these times of rest, they do like to spend that together. They will often spread out while they are feeding, but when they are resting, or if they feel threatened, they will close in like this. I do not think these guys feel threatened at all. I think they're just having a nice little snooze. And I'm reading that from their body language. A little dust bath. So if we come out a bit wide, you can see their body language is very relaxed. If they were taking a defensive stance towards us, all the larger adult females would be facing us, heads up, ears out, and trying to keep the youngsters behind them, which they're not really doing at the moment. They're just sort of meditating almost. Now, while we're on these safaris, all of us disappear on foot tracking, and I'm sure a lot of you will wonder and would like to know a little bit more about what goes on to walking in this wild African bushveld on foot. And obviously there are a lot of potentially dangerous situations, and a breeding herd of elephants like this on foot is one of those potentially dangerous situations. And that's where your senses come in so much. So even though these elephants are being quite quiet, if we were on foot, for example, and walking around an area, especially like we know there's a permanent water point nearby, and those elephants, and we would have found the tracks heading there, and just we found tracks, fresh tracks from during the day, they're on the move. Imagine that there's probably a signal being communicated by this, which looks to be the matriarch, which is the one right in front of us here, that it was time to move on. So she sort of signaled, probably in a decibel we couldn't hear, and off they go. And how lucky for us, they're crossing back into Juma. Hello, little men. So as I was saying, with their behavior, there's no aggression towards the vehicle at all. we might get a head shake from one of the youngsters coming through at the end. No, but there are no little boys. They all seem to be all little girls. So I think we'll be okay. No one trying to show off. No teenaged boy bravado. So we're just gonna zoop around to catch them as they cross the next road. It is possible that they might decide to go back to the water hole for another splish splash. Or it could be time to spread out and start feeding. Actually, I think going that way will be better. Definitely one of the animals I love spending a long time with, and one of the animals I've been very fortunate to spend a huge amount of time with over my career in the bush, on foot as well as from the vehicles. And they're now on the move to the left of us, so we're just going to pop around and see where they're heading. Further away, and if they want to come closer to us, then that's fine, but we're not going to invade their personal space. They're a nice, really relaxed breeding herd. So there we go, that's a little boy. I mean, you can almost just see by the behavior. So the ears out. I'm very big, I'm very scary, I'm very impressive. As I was saying, I've been very, very fortunate to spend a huge amount of time with elephants, both on foot and from the vehicle. And the area I learned the most about elephants was when I was a teenager in northern Botswana. And I was very lucky to have parents who do very different things to most people. And we lived in the largest wildernesses left in Africa. And I was pretty much allowed to roam almost unattended, apart from occasionally with trackers and other rangers when I was a bit younger, amongst these animals. And with elephants, reading their body language and that type of stuff, there's no substitute for experience. And possibly my earliest memory I have in my life is with elephants, and with an elephant bull in particular, a nice monster Okavango elephant bull. And I was about 2 years old, and my parents and my grandparents were all on a family camping trip in northern Botswana, and I was along there, and they'd stopped near a pan for a sundowner drink, and I, being me, managed to scuttle off, and suddenly they turned around and I was gone. And my dad suddenly looked out onto the pan where there was a bit of water and there was a big elephant bull there drinking, and I was standing about 10 meters away from this big elephant bull having a conversation with him. And that's probably my earliest childhood memory. My dad got such a fright and had to walk really, really slowly up and just lift me up and take me away, and all very calm and collective so as not to upset the elephant. He then gave me a hiding of note, which I probably thoroughly deserved, but my first memory as a child is actually talking to an elephant bull and getting a hiding afterwards. But after that, my dad did walk us into elephants. From when we were about 5 years old, he would take us walking up into elephants and other animals, but I always remember the elephants most. So, very, very special animal to me. And there we go. It looks like they're going to spread out and feed, so we're going to try to stay with them for a bit longer. As we've been talking about walking and walking in the bush, and obviously like this, so in the threat, they don't recognize us as a predator from a vehicle unless in very bad circumstances people have harassed them from vehicles. So when we get out of the vehicle, we give up this little safe cocoon. Quickly there. Looks like it's gonna sorry guys, a very strange little behavior there. It was almost kneeling on that branch as it was trying to break it. But as I was saying, this cat is a potential threat, and generally on foot we would try to avoid them, and if we did view them on foot we would view them from a very safe distance, probably 70-80 meters away. As I said, none of us out here want to ever put an animal in danger, and the biggest chance of putting an animal in danger in this area is to put a human in danger. So a lot of these circumstances where people and animals get hurt, it's because of bad decisions made at the time. And sometimes you do get in those positions where you don't have a choice. You stumble upon each other, and then how you react in those situations is very, very important. Very, very special animals. So, again, chatting about walking, if we can see these elephants here, if we were on a walking safari and we did want to view these elephants, we would want them not to be able to see us. So, if we have a look from where the elephants are, and they're all spread out, then you can see they're generally heading down towards Sydney's waterhole. If we come across to the right in front of me here, Brian, the wind is blowing towards me here, so I would test the wind to see where the wind was coming from. And the wind is blowing towards me, so I know they're not going to be able to smell me at the moment, and I would head straight for that large termite mound there. So that would provide us with cover, as well as a bit of elevation to see above the bush down onto the animals. And a nice big safe distance, probably about 60 meters. And we could watch the animals on foot without them even knowing we were there. And also, if they did start moving towards us, it would give us a safe avenue of escape, so we could move down using the termite mound to block the view of us as we moved away towards a safety, towards the drainage line. So these elephants are heading into an area where I know we traditionally have really, really bad signal. I will try to stay with them for a little bit longer, but as we drop down towards that drainage line, the signal does tend to break up. But we will try for a little bit longer. As I said, they might be deciding to go have another dip in the dam, and we should be able to see them do that fantastic water walk where they sort of just dot. And I can sort of see a little bit of sort of jaunty walk. Dust up. So guys, the signal is getting very bad here, so we're going to cross across to James, see what he's been up to, and we will stay with them. And if they go down to the water, I'll try to position myself on high ground where I know we've got good signal. We might not have the closest view, but we should have a really nice view of this family group going down to drink. So we'll see you a little later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga. Hina ayikumanga inchumu kwalani ayikume sihlahla ntsena. That means we have found you nothing other than a great proliferation of woody vegetation or trees. But it is still a wonderful afternoon out here. We did go and check at Biffle's Hook waterhole. Unfortunately, there was nothing there except 4,000 terrapins eating on a variety of zooplankton and various other things. seem that there's absolutely no need for you to be on game drive with us. David, you, the Zoomy, have been watching the Dam cam the whole time. And David, I think you're in Michigan. You say you're a Zoomy, and for those of you who don't know, Zoomy is the sort of controller of a camera that is permanently placed at Gowrie Dam. There's one at Voyatella, and they're over 50 around the place. Sorry, David is in the UK. And David, you say, if I get this correctly, throughout the course of today, you've seen elephants, buffalo, giraffe, duiker, nyala, impala. I think that was it. Oh, and a Maribou stork, you say you saw coming down to drink. And Mary from Michigan, you want to know about those Maribou storks and if they migrate. They don't, Mary. Maribou storks, and for those of you who don't know, I will show you a picture, in fact. Maribou storks are possibly the ugliest bird we find in South Africa, and they are scavengers, and they're actually quite closely related to what we call the New World vultures. So by New World, I mean the Americas. I'm just going to stop here. It's always a good idea to stop and have a listen, and I'll show you a picture of the Maribou stork. And by New World, I mean the Americas, and so a condor or something like that is quite closely related to the Maribou stork. And it is over, oh dear, I'm being very slow about this. Here he is. Okay, that is the Maribou stork over there. Now you can see, not a bird of sort of stunning beauty, a kind of balding, scraggly, mottled head, and of course that's ideal for sticking into carcasses. It's a really good thing to stick into a carcass. That's why they don't have feathers on their heads, a bit like the vultures. So unlike our vultures here, or the old world vultures, they don't find their kills by smell, they find their kills by sight. And the Maribou stork and the New World vultures find their carrion and sort of rotting meat kills predominantly by using their noses. Now in the case of the New World, that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of the vultures live above forested areas where your eyes are fairly useless if you're trying to spot frot things on the ground. Frot is another South African word meaning rotting, and I didn't actually mean to use it, it just sort of came up. And while our vultures here, of course, are flying over open woodland and clearings and grassland, and so for them sight is a much more important thing. And while our vultures look more similar to condors than that Maribou stork does, the stork is more closely related to your New World vultures. Well, those of you who are in the New World, those of you who live in England or perhaps in Europe, well, vultures are short to come by. Right, on we go. I'm glad you had some elephants with Brent. I'm slightly jealous that he managed to find the Tindlopfu before I did. On the theme of Shangaan, and speaking Shangaan, thank you Stephanie for your question. I believe you're a new viewer in Switzerland. Well, this is certainly different from Switzerland out here. You would like to know what my favorite word in Shangaan is. I don't know what my favorite word in Shangaan is. I suppose it would be, it's probably a word that contains the sort of whistle that, in fact, I do know what it is. There's a uniqueness to some of the sounds in Shangaan. So, for example, if you say shihari, which means animal, many animals is shihari, and that sound is not really found in any other language. So, likewise, there's another word that means grass, and that's jani, and that's a strange kind of sound, and I really like the words that have those sounds in them. So jani or shihari, suija, jani, the animals eat the grass. Speaking of which, Brent is on the move with his Tindlopfu, so I'm going to hand you back over to him, and I will see you a little bit later, hopefully with something a little more exciting than shihlahla. See you now.
welcome back everyone. We've still with this wonderful little breeding herd of elephants. We've managed to get up ahead of them, and as I was explaining about when we walk, we've managed to get the vehicle up on top of a dormant termite mound, and so it's also quite nice. We don't often get to be above elephants as such, or on a little bit of a high ground with the ellies, and as they walk towards us, hopefully we're going to get some fantastic views. And for those of you who take screenshots, this is a great opportunity to get a different angle on the elephants, and don't forget to tweet those screenshots with the hashtag Safari Live. Here we go, and we can see the matriarch leading them again. I'm hoping when they did this last time, they did some wonderful talking, those rumbles. So I'm hoping they do it again. Naughty little ones. Isn't this incredible? So we're actually above the elephants now. And I mean, isn't that a fantastic shot of that family moving past us? So unfortunately also in this area is bad radio comms, so we are going to stay with this. It's a bit of a bad signal, bad radio comms, and I'm sure you guys do have lots of questions about these ellies. Unfortunately where I am right now, I can't hear the radio too well, so we will definitely get to those questions as soon as we can get to an area with better comms and more stable signal. So we can see the water behind them. So it looks like these ellies went for a lunchtime drink and swim, and it looks like they might be going for a tea time drink and swim as well. Except they won't be having any crumpets, they'll be having bush willows. So this waterhole is very close to the main entrance gate, and what we're seeing those elephants stop and take note of now is there's a staff housing very close by, and they've actually just noticed someone walking. So they're just stopping and taking note of a person walking in the staff area before they move on. That's why they suddenly just stop like that and are listening and concentrating. So I mean, you've seen when we're in the vehicle around them, they don't take any notice, but now that they've seen that bipedal figure of man who has been the dominant diurnal predator for the last 150 to 200,000 years, the reaction is completely different to what it would be from a vehicle. A vehicle's only been around for just over 100 years, so if you treat them with respect from the vehicle and you drive carefully, you don't have that really negative response. Well, it's not really a negative response, but it is an instinctive response. See, they've now assessed, decided that person's not too much of a threat, and they're going to carry on moving now. So as these ellies move off, they might go play in the water, and obviously as soon as I move off this high ground we're on now, we're probably going to lose signal. So we're going to cross back to James, who's going to hold the fort while we speed around to the next high point where we can possibly see these ellies around the waterhole.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga. You find us off-road because I have smelt the unmistakable smell of rotting meat. Something here has died. Now whether that is by natural causes or whether it has been haplessly taken to pieces by a predator, which is what I'm hoping, I'm not sure. First place I came to look was in that very green weeping boerbean tree, which Liam is going to show you now. and I was hoping to find a leopard draped across one of those comfortable looking boughs, but there is no leopard there at all at the moment. And at the moment the smell has left my nostrils. Now it's basically coming from the right hand side of your screen, because that's where the wind is blowing from, or it's a very gentle breeze. So we're just going to do a little drive through here and see if we can't find something that is perhaps rotting quietly on this warm afternoon. There, I got it again, Liam. Did you smell it?
Negative. You sure you bathed this morning?
I'm sure I bathed. Otherwise, yes, that's a good point, thank you. Liam, it's not very nice to say to me while I'm live. So we're just going to drive through here. We'll check the termite mounds, we'll check in the tall trees. I'm thinking perhaps a leopard was killed around here. But it may be as simple as the fact that maybe a hyena relieved himself quite recently on the road. While we're looking, perhaps the sign of a leopard having made himself or herself a meal in this area. Sandy in Palm Springs, you missed the drive this morning and you want a quick update. Well, this morning we only found Sandile. I say only as if that's... But the last drives we've had Shadow and a male mating with her, the Anderson male and the Tingana. And so we found Sandile. Alright, we're going to quickly go across to Brent and I will carry on with that story just now. Off to the Tindlufu, and I'll see you now.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, those ellies have made their way to a little man-made waterhole next to the larger waterhole. Very similar to what we've got at the Djuma waterhole. So elephants, if they have a choice, will go for that nice freshly pumped water as opposed to that smelly dam water that's probably made up more of buffalo and hippo urine than actual H2O at the moment. They still might move into the main waterhole to cool off and splash some mud, so we're definitely going to hang around to see that. Unfortunately, it is across our northern boundary, but still very worthwhile just watching and spending some more time with these ellies. And there you can see the main body of water. And those of you who are watching the sunrise safari, remember there was a large pod of hippos in the water, and now the majority of those hippos are out to the right, basking in the sun, because even though it is warm, it has been a relatively cool day. So we have a hippo beach and some large suntanners. So as we've been spending our time with a breeding herd that has, quickly, African hawk eagles, what looks like, he's going, he's chasing a bird, he's trying to kill it. It might not be a hawk eagle, I can't see what it is, but because there's two of them hunting there, I think it is a hawk eagle. They often hunt in tandem, I can't even see what they're hunting. Whatever it was has made its escape, and I'm pretty sure those hawk eagles are quite disappointed. And you can just hear the pandemonium, all the grey go-away birds. Go on, go on, go on. So I heard them initially make those calls, and then all of a sudden just got these high speed moving birds. I really wish I knew what that bird was that we were chasing, but it did a last minute dip and managed to escape. There we go, the pair of hawk eagles are now starting to fly again to try catch a thermal, get some height. So one of their hunting tactics is absolutely amazing. So one will fly quite high, and a lot of whatever they're hunting will see that one flying high, and the other will keep very low just amongst the trees. So they'll often, whatever they might be hunting, will start alarm calling at the one flying high, and they keep watching it as the other performs a sneak attack. Oh, there's a bit of excitement out of nowhere. Sorry, James, I got completely sidetracked from your question there. As the hawk eagles chased an identified bird. Luckily for that bird, it managed to escape. So as I said, we're looking at a breeding herd of elephants that has a very high female ratio. There's only one little bull, and it was the youngest one, who's about a year old. And James from Kansas City was wondering, what is the ratio of adult or sexually mature bulls to breeding herds? Well, James, I'm not sure of the exact ratios, but there will be far more females than males. And those big dominant males, as you can see, we don't see those really, really big bulls that often, and they do trail herds when there are females in estrus. But generally, when this area's got a very high concentration of breeding herds, so females and youngsters, the bulls will prefer to spend their time in an area where there's not too many breeding herds. It's quite a lot of pandemonium and commotion, and unless they're trying to mate, they will tend to spend their time away from these breeding herds. Well, chatting about male and female ratios and pregnancies, which obviously go very much hand in hand, we have a question from one of our regular viewers, Sarah, who's 17 years old. Welcome back, Sarah. Always great to have you on the back of the vehicle with us. And she's wondering, is there a certain time of the year that elephants fall pregnant, like an impala who has a distinct rutting season, or wildebeest that have a distinct rutting season? Sarah, there isn't. Elephants will breed throughout the year, but you will find that there is a period of the year where more females are in estrus than not. And this will often coincide with the time of the males must cycle. So a female comes into estrus, comes into heat, and at a certain time of the year, this is generally just before the first rains, or workouts where there's the most amount of food around and stuff, because obviously developing a baby of that size must take a lot of extra nutrients. So a lot of females will come into estrus at that stage, and the big dominant male bulls, their must cycle will coincide with that. On saying that, however, females can come into estrus at any time of the year, and your younger must bulls, till they get older and big enough to challenge those big must bulls, their must cycles fall into the time of the year when there are the least females in estrus, therefore giving them the least chance of mating with multiple females. Whereas the females who come into estrus at the best time of the year is the same time as the dominant males come into must, and that gives them the opportunity to mate with multiple dominant males and therefore get the best chance at the best genes. That was a very, very good question, Sarah. Thanks very much for that. And it looks like they are not going to go swimming, but move along, see what else there is to go eat. So those of you who've been watching for quite a while will notice when we come up to these little man-made waterholes, the elephants seem to form circles around it, and she's wondering if there's any particular reason for this. Very much so, Susie. A circle is the easiest shape to build a waterhole in. So it's very easy for people to lay a circular slab of concrete and therefore, so the elephants don't jostle for the same position, they will go in a circular motion around that water hole. I wish it was something far more romantic and African and wonderful, but unfortunately not. Can you hear those hippos in the distance? So I know I've heard now that some of you guys have noticed while we've been watching the elephants and the hawk eagles and the hippos, quite a busy waterhole this sunset safari. There we go, there's some nests in those trees. And Sherry from Colorado is wondering what type of bird would nest in that tree. Well, let me get my book out, but I'll tell you now, it is a red-billed buffalo weaver. A fascinating little bird. So related to the weavers that build those wonderful little nests above the water, except this is built in a very different way. They are communal nesters, so that is actually multiple nests of quite a small bird, and they are incredibly built out of thorns. So those large acacia thorns are very, very spiky, and one of the reasons they choose to build their nest in trees that are surrounded by water like that is a very, very good defense mechanism against snakes and other possible predators, because they'd have to cross the water to get there, and then even after getting there they've got to get through all those spiky thorns and whatnot to try get into the nest. So that's why they do that. And also living in multiple nesting groups, so communal nesters, is very same as living in a herd of animals. The chance of you being eaten is lessened by the fact that there's more of you. Just 2 seconds, I'm just looking for that red-billed buffalo weaver in my book. And there are a lot of weavers in Africa, and I have the big book that, there we go, covers all the birds from Africa south of the Sahara, so sometimes it does take me a few seconds. So there we go. That is the red-billed buffalo weaver, a member of the Little Five. And the Little Five are a group of animals that share a name with one of the big members of the Big Five. So we have a red-billed buffalo weaver, we have an ant lion, we have an elephant shrew, we have, what have we got there? And we have a leopard tortoise. So I've left one out on purpose. See if you guys can tell me what is the missing member of the Little Five. So I've given you 4: a red-billed buffalo weaver, a leopard tortoise, an elephant shrew, and an ant lion. What is the missing member of the Little Five? And you can send your answers through via email to questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So the ellies have departed, the hawk eagles have moved, and we've still got the hippos. And as we're chatting about these hippos, and Julia says the hippos seem to be covered in oxpeckers, and you are spot on, Julia. And she's wondering, is this normal? It is normal. The oxpeckers do feed off hippos quite often, and you can actually see them sometimes using hippos as safe drinking points in the water. But hippos, while they wander around in the evenings grazing, and then they can cover up to 30 kilometers in a night away from water and through the grasslands, will pick up just as many ticks as the other animals. So it is not unusual at all to have lots of oxpeckers on a hippo, and especially not at this time of the day. It's been a very hot day, so obviously the oxpeckers are also taking this opportunity to have a drink. So keeping with our Shangaan theme, the name for a hippo in Shangaan or in Zulu is Mvubu. Mvubu. And if you move further north, Spedi and Tsone, it's Kubu, K-U-B-U. We actually had a pet dog that got the nickname Hippo. When it was a puppy, it used to eat itself it used to get so full so quickly, it literally whole body changed to look like a little hippo. It was a bourbal, and her name was Kubu, like the hippo. You can see that little baby at the back there. So continuing with our Shangaan themed sunset safari, Stephanie asked James a question: what is your favorite word in Shangaan? She'd also like to know what mine is. And I'm going to play this around a little differently. I'm going to answer that at the end, just before I link to James. And then we've got a question from Thelma, who would like to know, how would you say see you later in Shangaan? Well, James's Shangaan is far better than mine. I have a very sort of basic understanding, and James is completely fluent, which is incredible. I have a better understanding of Zulu and Swahili, but I will give it a go, Thelma, and I might even give you one in Zulu as well. Do you want see you later? Or we can say see you later in the evening. There's Uzubonu Iksen. Oh no, sorry, that's tomorrow morning. Oh, Zumbona in Tambab. We'll see you in the afternoon, but that's Zulu. I'm going to have to think about the Shangaan for a little bit, and when you come back to me, I'll get back to you. But I do have one, there we go, for Stephanie, my favorite Shangaan word, and I'm going to play with it a little bit and throw it back at James. Because I'm going to say my favorite Shangaan word is Baizan, and James is a Baizan, and let's see what he has to say about that.
Hello everybody, welcome back. I believe my old colleague Brent there has used a word that is not necessarily that complimentary to describe me. I'm also not convinced that it's a Shangaan word at all, but I'm going to leave it at that because there is a very small element of doubt in my mind. We are now on the trail towards Treehouse Dam. I failed to come up with anything, I'm afraid, around whatever was smelling of death around where we were sitting. So I'm really not sure. We gave it a good thorough look, but didn't seem to come up with anything there. So it may have been a lizard that had died in a termite mound, or a mongoose that had passed on and shaken off this mortal coil, likewise in a termite mound. I'm not sure. There were some elephants around there today, and they didn't seem too perturbed, so the chances of there being a predator in the area quite small, really. Right, so we're heading towards Treehouse Dam, and Sandy in Palm City. I just want to finish what I was saying to you before you went off to look at the wonderful Tintlopu with Brent, and you just wanted a quick update on the leopards of the area. So like I say, the leopards we've been seeing most commonly at the moment are Sindile, a young male leopard, a year old, and apparently chaps I said the other day that he had been given his official name of Madiba by these Arathusa Rangers, but apparently that is not official yet. So I got myself into trouble by saying that. Anyway, you can call him Madiba or Sindile, whatever you like, until the name is official. Anyway, he's been on his own about sort of a kilometer from here, not too far, just sort of probably eating franklins and the odd lizard and maybe the odd dwarf mongoose. Seems quite full, seems quite healthy, but he's been on his own for about 4 days. And his mother has been away mating, firstly with Tingana and then with the Anderson male further to the west of here. So that's the update there. Karula we saw a few days ago, but she's gone off into Torchwood. Now, I don't know where Mbule is. We haven't seen tracks of him for a long time. And then we had wonderful Quarantine and Kunyuma. Some almost, what have you got, Biam? Biam Thoughty saw a putty cat. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So we had the 2 3-year-old males, Kunyuma and Quarantine, recently. one just in the sort of middle of the property and the other just south of us, eating a kudu. So, Sandy and Palm City, that's the sort of leopard update for now. Right, we are now arriving at Treehouse Waterhole, where there are a whole lot of tinyari. One nyari, many tinyari. And I'm just trying to think what the best angle is. Should we go down here, Bill?
I like that.
A whole lot of buffalo bulls. There's one very happy there in the mud, and some parrots. You can hear the parrots calling. We'll stop here, I think. That's all right. You? So if you want to say that the buffalo are in the water, you would say tinyari tile matini. Mati, water, tinyari tile matini. The buffalo are in the water. It's quite a lot of bird activity, so I'm just going to listen for a while and you can get an idea of what is calling around here. Right, so that sort of metallic scraping is a brown-headed parrot. A Shangaan word I don't know for the brown-headed parrot. In fact, there's one up there, Viam. So when you get a chance. And then there's some oxpeckers calling, and they're eating the ticks off the backs of these buffalo. I heard a red-faced mouse bird going toot-toot-toot, toot-toot-toot, toot-toot-toot. Magpie shrikes in the distance, and of course the inimitable and ubiquitous mantengu. That is a, what's a mantengu, Jim?
Drongo.
Yes, a fork-tailed drongo, mantengu. So there is the brown-headed parrot, whose most obvious feature, of course, is its bright green back. So why it is called a brown-headed parrot is anyone's guess. I sometimes think the people that named these birds purposely chose not to have a sense of humor. There's another bird called a black-collared barbet, whose most obvious feature is a bright red head. And why it's not called a red-headed barbet is quite beyond me. So these buffalo will spend their day, sorry, I'm just having a bit of a giggle because Viam was trying to communicate something to me and I didn't really understand what he was saying, but I've got him now. It's not important. Buffalo bulls like this spending the day, hot day like this, in the mud and in the sand and close to water, because of course the limiting factor for buffalo around this time of year is always going to be water. They've got an astonishingly efficient digestive system and they can eat the driest grass, and you can see as we're driving around that the only greenery left is that belonging to the magic Gowrie bush, and they can handle the driest, most sort of straw-like grass provided they have sufficient water to drink. And it doesn't even need to be very good water, and as you can see from this sort of cesspit that they happen to be dwelling next to and in some cases, there's absolutely no limit to the poorness of the quality that they're able to drink. I also believe that my colleague Brent Leo Smith managed to tell you that his Zulu was better than mine. Well, I think we're going to test him slightly, and we'll see. I'm going to send a message to him through you. And Sue, you're interested in sort of whether there's some kind of danger from what you've called a water buffalo. Now, of course, these are not water buffalo. A water buffalo, would you just, the parrot is about to have a drink there. Thanks, Viam. Sue in California, just back to your query. See the parrot having a drink there? Beautiful green color. These are not water buffalo. They came called African buffalo or Cape buffalo, and a water buffalo is an Asian species that is definitely less potentially dangerous than an African buffalo, and they've been domesticated very successfully, and that's indeed where mozzarella comes from. But these buffalo are not particularly dangerous, Sue, unless they are feeling very threatened. Now, their legend of their ferocity and nastiness comes mainly from the fraternity of people that like to shoot them. And a buffalo will inescapably become very dangerous if you threaten its life. If you don't, they're actually fairly passive. And what you want to do, you want to avoid giving them a fright, obviously, especially if you're on foot, because they do see human beings as a threat. And so if you give them a fright on foot, they can react in a manner that might be perceived as aggressive. But certainly I have walked very close by to buffalo, totally unaware of them, and then suddenly become aware of them standing next to me. And they've done nothing but look at me with the same look that one in your picture is kind of staring blankly into the middle distance doing. They're not in and of themselves hugely dangerous animals. Again, their reputation probably also comes from watching them being hunted by lions, and lions do tend to take a bit of a beating from them when they're hunting them. And well, I mean, that's just simply because lions are threatening them. Beautiful sighting of some brown-headed parrots there. So Sue, I hope that answers your question. Two different aspects to it. One, potentially dangerous, yes, if threatened, and second part, of course, is that they're not water buffalo. They are African or Cape buffalo. Right, I think it's time to come up with a little Zulu saying that you can give to Brent. I think you should ask him what the following means. Iqaqa lidlula umgwaqo. Iqaqa lidlula umgwaqo. Okay, just ask Brent that and see if he understands what that means. It does mean the frog crosses the road. Iqaqa, frog, I-X-A, X-A, Iqaqa, lidlula, it crosses, umgwaqo, U-M-N-G-Q-W-A-K-O, umgwaqo. No, umgwaqo, U-M-N-G-W-A-Q-O, umgwaqo. Right, you take that to him, let's see what he says. Okay, I think these buffalo have entertained us sufficiently for one afternoon, and we're going to continue on. What I want to do now, there isn't a huge amount in the way of sort of big cat action at the moment, so we're going to just enjoy the afternoon from a perspective of the smaller things and some of the views. And I was just saying to VM that over to the west there's a cloud bank building up that doesn't feel like winter anymore, and I think it's just heavier. It feels like it's carrying some moisture. Now, I'm not for 1 second saying it's going to rain, but we're going to go off towards the west, towards a sort of high point where we can look out to the west and just have an assessment of what those clouds really are and if they are carrying a bit more water. There's a bit of expectancy in the air. It may go away immediately. I don't think it's going to rain till November, but everyone else seems to think I'm being a bit pessimistic about that, except Brent. Actually, Brent and I agree that it's going to be probably around November, late November. Everyone else thinks sometime in September and October. Well, we'll see. I hope we're wrong. I don't think we are. Okay, here we go. And rain in Shangaan, for those of you who are wondering, is mvula. And quite interestingly, well, of course, one of the main territorial leopards of this area is called imvula. and mvula is the Zulu word for rain. So they are quite similar languages, Shangaan and Zulu. So mvula in Shangaan and imvula in isiZulu. A very nice question from Mr. Ignatius Michael Itch Falyun, whose names we have managed to butcher a number of times, and I hope, Itch, that I got all four of them correct this time round. And you ask a very interesting question. You say, red-faced mouse bird, is it not called, I think you've said Nchinchevu in Zulu, and I don't know, but I think it could well be Vu. Hang on a second, let me get that again. Chichivu. Chichivu. So the C in Zulu is a Chichivu. And I don't know Itch, but I tell you what I can say is that it certainly sounds, a lot of the indigenous birds names here are onomatopoeic, and Chichivu certainly sounds like the call that they make. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Yeah, Chichivu. Could well be. Good one. Thank you, Itch. Mr. Ignatius Michael Falyun of Pretoria, the capital of South Africa. And so it would seem that some of our viewers are certainly learning some of the Shangaan names. And Kachino John, a regular viewer, and well, I mean, he's virtually a comedian, is old Kachino John. He does make us laugh. And you want to know, where are all the Ngala? Now, Ngala means lion in Shangaan. One Ngala, many Tingala, lots of lions. Tingala, Tinaru, 3 lions. And the lions, John, I will tell you exactly where they are. We have and this is because Brent told me before the drive, the lions are on Elephant Plains. That's the sort of... Then we've got the Nkahumas just north of that on Simbambili. The Birmingham guys north on Buffels Hook. This is all places we can't go, of course. And then the Styx Pride and the Matimba males on Hoffmans, which is just to the south of us. So John, thank you for that. That's where all of the Tingala are, lurking about the place. None of them here. While we're driving along talking about the lions, Tom from Holland, you've asked a number of interesting questions, to which there are some actually pretty definitive answers in most cases. You've said if the Birmingham boys do take over this area, which is highly likely, in fact I think it's pretty much in process, and they've already killed 2 cubs belonging to the Matimba males, who were the dominant coalition of 2 males in this area. You've said, would they kill cubs? Would, say, a dominant one kill the cubs of one of his less dominant brothers, perhaps? The answer is no, that wouldn't happen, and there's seldom a dominance hierarchy within the coalition unless there is a very obvious size difference between the males, and unless in fact the Matimbas are a nice example of that. The dark-maned male in the Matimbas, who has been called hairy belly, rather unflattering for such a magnificent animal, seems to be carrying a lot more testosterone than his brother, who's been called Ginger, and that's what's given him that big dark mane, and I think he's doing a lot more mating than Ginger ever did. So there is an argument that, but I don't think Ginger would ever kill any of hairy belly's cubs. So to answer the first part of your question, I don't think there'd be any kind of infanticide sort of within the coalition. And then you ask, would the coalition split up? And the answer is most likely yes, probably into 2 and 3, and that just helps them to dominate a larger area. They don't then become competitors, and they may well join up at times, and certainly we were hearing last night some interesting stories from one of the Simbambili rangers, a chap called Tristan, and he said that the Majingelane coalition, which dominates the south and the west of the Sabi Sands, they split into 2 groups of 2 and 2, but when there's trouble, 2 of them call and the others come immediately, and that's how they managed to dominate an enormous area of roughly 40,000 hectares, which is an enormous piece of ground, 400 square kilometers or so. So a huge piece of ground. So nice question there, John. Gentle breeze blowing in from the northwest, which I hesitate to say it is normally the breeze on which the storms come in. And I believe Brent was also worried a bit earlier about a fire being perhaps burning in Manyeleti, which is quite a long way north of us. And like I've said before, the grass levels are so low after such a poor rainy season that any bushfire is not going to be a major issue this year. But nevertheless, these northwesterly winds often do sort of drive fires this way because they tend to be a bit warmer than some of the southerly ones. Right, and as we've predicted, or as per plan, Brent has arrived at the sighting of Yingwana, and that means a small, well, I'm not going to tell you what it means. You probably know what Yingwe means, but Yingwana is the diminutive form, and we're going to head across to that spotted magnificence and see you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we are with the young trouble causer and a firm favorite of all of ours at the moment, and Shadow's young male cub. He's on the other side of our traverse area at the moment, so we're hoping he doesn't head too much further into that direction, as we're not going to be able to follow him. We spent an amazing morning with him while he played on that fallen down Cambretum tree, but hopefully he decides to come back across towards us shortly. Sorry guys, I'm just going to say hello to Roy, who's here as well. How's it, Roy? Very good, thanks before. Whoops. Oh, we had a little love tap from another vehicle. We just happened to clip our corner, but no damage. So the reason we didn't head out here while it was still hot is because the likelihood of him being very much fast asleep was very high. He hasn't moved very far from where we had him this morning on the sunrise safari. And hopefully he decides to return to his favorite termite mound on the Juma side. Just going to wait for the other vehicles to move and then I'll reposition. No, you naughty little monster. Come back this way. There we go. That's a much better direction. Okay, he pops off there. We're going to turn around and reposition. Unfortunately, it does look like he's heading a little bit further south. He is still parallel to the road, so hopefully he doesn't wander too far south. Tax is also here, and I'm sure Tax is the same as me, hoping he comes back north. So he is heading, unfortunately, into the south. We are going to hang around here for a little bit longer. As we know, with young Sandile, he does tend to jig and jag and zig and zag and jump and bounce and do all sorts of wonderful things. So there's a strong possibility he might head back towards one of his favorite termite mounds in the northern section of this road. We're just going to keep a close eye on him now. And while we're doing that, he's just moving through the thickets over there. I can't really see him too well. Oh, and there he actually is disappearing well off to the south. Unfortunately, that is beyond where we are able to drive. So perfect timing. We just managed to get a visual of him before he disappeared. And the other vehicles are able to drive there. So unfortunately, we're going to have to leave. But at least we got to catch up with him for a short while in the Sunset Safari. Hopefully we can go find something else that's just as exciting as young Sandile. How's it, Peter? Good. How's everything your side?
Good.
And, which one?
Shivambalan.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good luck. Off to those Ngala.
I have to choose now. Which one's closest?
Let's enjoy. Hey guys, that was just Peter from down south. It's just said there's a big male leopard down south and east where he is, called Shivambalan. If I remember correctly, you long-term viewers might be able to set me straight if I'm wrong, but I think Shivambalan is one of Karula's boys. I'm not 100% sure. If you guys do know, let me know. And you can do that by emailing us on questions@wildearth.tv or using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. I do love this time of the day as the sun starts getting a little bit low. Temperatures just drop that skosh. It's almost the ideal time of the day for certain animals to start moving, like leopard. Unfortunately today, Sandile moved the wrong direction, but we have been so lucky with him. He's been moving the right direction most days, and hopefully tomorrow morning on the sunrise safari, it'll be the same again. on the subject of leopards, we've just spent a very short time, but still a great time with young Sandile. Mavis and Lynn are wondering, they got a report from Scott this morning about a female leopard that Shadow ran into, and that was to the west of here, who has a young cub. Her name is Salahesha, as far as I'm aware. And do I know anything further than that story? Unfortunately, I don't, but I will try find out as soon as I can. I think we would have heard if Shadow had killed or Salahesha and Shadow had fought. And so far, I haven't heard any news of that. I think they just bumped into each other. Those who've been watching for a while will remember an absolutely fantastic sighting that Scott and I both had when we had a fire on one of the vehicles, and we presented together out of one vehicle for a sunset safari, and we're following Mvula and Kwatile. And while they were mating, Karula came and kept following them and watching them. She didn't actually fight with them because female leopards will often move well out of territory to mate. So maybe that could have what happened, but at the moment I'm just guessing and speculating. Hopefully once I get a bit more information, I'll be able to give you a bit more solid information on that, on what happened this morning. Okay, so we had a little chat about the little five, and Enid, Ginny, and Lady Macbeth got it spot on. It is a rhinoceros beetle. Rhino beetles are actually quite closely related to dung beetles, and as spring is approaching, I know we're getting a lot of questions about kingfishers, woodlands kingfishers in particular, and dung beetles, and unfortunately a lot of those things, well, the insects especially, we're probably only going to see dung beetles after the first rains. So probably late October, early November, I think first rains this year. And I'm just guessing. There's a little pool of guesses going around. Brian, what was your guess?
18th September.
So Brian reckons our first decent rain, and we decided we had to clarify it. It means it must be more than 5 millimeters. Brian said 18th September.
One drop is raining, one drop.
This is the argument we continue to have with cameramen. So rain actually needs to be able to change and affect a change on the environment around us, in our opinion. So it has to be more than 5 millimeters. And so Brian's in September. I think James is the 20th of November, and I am the 22nd of November. So we think our first big rains are going to be a bit later than most of the other stuff. And we're hoping that the fact that we've been in the Lowveld for a few years and have a little bit of experience in the area under our belt will stand us in good fame for that. But as Ernest Hemingway once said, 2 things one should never predict: the weather and a woman's moods. So we might be playing with fire by trying to predict the weather. But also, I've been trying to look for me, which was the first sign that spring was on its way. I will keep trying to search for this plant, and it was showing little tiny buds weeks before I know you saw with Jamie, the tree wisteria with flowers, and with James, the knobthorn that started flowering. But Steph and I saw one probably 2.5 weeks before that stuff started, and we're going to try find you one and show, because if you're not looking carefully, those tiny little buds will go completely unnoticed, and it is generally the first plant that will start to show new buds and new leaves when spring is on its way. So we are going to keep looking for that, and hopefully we'll find lots of other interesting things along the way. I really can't wait for the first rains. One of my favorite little creatures are going to be coming out, and that's the frogs. And I'll definitely do my best to try take you guys on some frogging expeditions, and we're definitely going to have a wonderful time listening to those frog calls and trying to identify and pick out which frogs are where. And Brian made some fantastic recordings of frog calls during the wet season last year, and hopefully we're going to be able to do the same this year. And hopefully we can get some new frog species for our Juma list. Let's carry on down towards the drainage line. So So James has challenged me to say whether I can say the frog that crosses the road. But see, now I have a few tricks up my own sleeve, and he's challenged me because it has so many clicks in it. But if you're smart, there's a way to say it with almost no clicks. And that would be, it depends. There's also colloquial words. So obviously there isn't the there's different nicknames and words for things. So I can't exactly remember what the word for frog is, but I can remember what the colloquial one that I learned from the trackers at Pinder, which is sela sele, no clicks, very easy to say. So sela sele fambe ndao, he's gone across the road. And I managed to do it with no clicks, so let's see if James can beat that. And speaking of clicks, my dad spent some time when he was younger in the Transkei, which is home to the Xhosa people, and he taught us a little saying when we were kids. And probably one of the hardest things to say in isiXhosa, and that is, and basically that means I can only speak a little bit of Xhosa. So quite a fun one, that. But there are lots of clicks in different languages, and I do have to admit James's Zulu and Shangaan is far better than mine, but I do have a little trick up my sleeve for a little later that I think I might fox him with. Very soft light today because of that high humidity, or there's a lot of dew, so a lot of moisture in the air, so it settled a bit of the dust. So we're probably not going to get one of those really blood red sunsets like we've been having. It's going to be a bit of a softer light, and the sun is moving into a little bit of cloud, but nonetheless I'm sure it's going to be an absolutely stunning sunset, as it has been a stunning sunset safari. I'm still searching for that. Voila! And that's why it is sometimes so easy to miss. And we have a look here. That's why it's so easy to miss, as it's one of the first plants that starts to show that little greenery and buds for the beginning of spring. It is tiny. These are already, think about it, 2 weeks in development. So when we first saw them, all you were seeing was that tiny little bit of green like that coming off. And it's always, for me, the first sign in the Lowveld that spring is on the way and the coldest time is over. And this little, it actually can become a creeper as well. It's called a knobbly combretum, or Combretum mozambicense. So the Latin name or scientific name, Combretum, is the family, and it's very common in Mozambique and the surrounding areas. So mozambicense is where it gets its name from. And as nice as it is to see them, we're probably going to be shouting at them come the end of wet season. They grow incredibly quickly, and they have a very long, whippy, hooky thing that they actually use to climb onto other branches and other trees to spread out. And quite often when you're following an animal off-road, you will be hit from nowhere, because it can be sometimes 3 or 4 meters long and a very fine, thin little whip that can really, really sting. But there we go, my first indicator that spring is on the way, the knobbly combretum. let's continue on to see what else we can find. They're all strapped back in. Hide it with the hair. There we go. So we're going to cross across to Commander Bond, and I've got a little challenge for Commander Bond, and it is an update about what happened with young Sindile. So Commander Bond, if you are ready, sir. Chui twendile porin. Chui twendile porini. Chui twendile porini. Now let's see if Commander Bond can figure out what that is.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Giga and Arathusa. Not Giga, we're on Wendy, but we are on Arathusa as well. And my mind is racing with what Brent was trying to challenge me with. I have to confess I don't even know what language it was. So I confess to being completely defeated. I think he also said to you that a frog that he heard was called Isela. Now, I have heard that myself, so I did do a quick check, but indeed Ikoko is the frog word that I know, but there may well be one. Zulu is an incredibly rich language, of course, and perhaps there are more than one word for frog. And Brent did certainly spend a lot of his formative years in KwaZulu, which is the home of the AbaKwaZulu, or the little children of the sky, as they were once known. So we've come on to here. I'm afraid there are, again, no tracks of anything particularly enormous, but we are having a very pleasant afternoon out here. And the sky, I just want to try and get to a spot where we can show it to you. It's a kind of, no, it's a very odd, Viam, how would you describe it in one word?
Apocalyptical.
It is. I'm not sure that apocalyptical is a word, but I'll take his meaning. It is a slightly apocalyptic sky, and that cloud is heavy there. I don't know what it means or what it's bringing for us, but I hope it's something interesting. Perhaps some hot weather tomorrow is quite possible. Anyway, we're now terra incognito to the west in Arathusa, trying to see what little bits and pieces we have here. And I believe Brenty managed to find some signs of spring for you, some buds that are coming out. And Liam and I found a marula tree. He said that a few weeks ago he actually found a marula tree in the same state that is now starting to sprout leaves. Now what's interesting about that is that the trees out here do not sprout leaves on the back end of any heat or any moisture. That's a waterbuck, Liam. Piva. Ricola. What's one? Tumbela Kwalan. There is the piva. And if I say piva ritumbela, I mean the waterbuck is hiding. And you can see how beautifully hidden the waterbuck is. Perfectly colored for this winter vegetation. If I was to choose a color to be out here and I had to avoid predators, that would be the color that I would choose. Very easy to miss. You can just see the flicking of the ear there. So as I was saying, the trees don't respond so much to heat or moisture like the grass does. They respond to the change in day length, which I always think is so remarkable. So even if the water table, in an extremely severe drought, you probably wouldn't have a huge response from some of the trees like the knobthorns and the marulas, which are already coming into bud now. But you know, as long as the water table is not too dire, you will get them sprouting, and that's because the day length has changed. Isn't it astonishing that a plant has the ability to sense the length of the day? I find that really amazing. I suppose if your life depends on the amount of sun you get, it probably becomes quite a good idea to be able to tell how long the day is going to be, but I still do find it absolutely astounding. So can anyone tell me what Brent meant? Or indeed what language he was talking in? So, update that he was saying, what? Ah, well done, Viam. I thought you'd spotted a leopard, but you've spotted some marula leaves. Well done. So here's another sign of spring, and just while we're looking at Viam setting the camera out, apparently Brent's Swahili phrase, well, he's quite good in Swahili, means the leopard walked through the bush. So the equivalent in Shangaan would be Yingwe Yifambe Noveni. Yingwe Yifambe Noveni. Or in Zulu, Yingwe Lihambe Ehlatini. Yingwe Lihambe Ehlatini. There we got some first marula leaves. Beautiful. It's so exciting to see those things. The end of a... Well, I mean, I know our winters are short, but it's still hell of a nice to see some very nice spring leaves. So we did follow up on that smell of the rotting meat, and Itch has come with a very interesting question. Itch in Pretoria, you say, could there not have been a tree coming into bloom? Now, that might to some of you sound a little bit ridiculous. Itch is actually onto something there. There are a number of trees that actually do smell like rotting meat. What you got, Viam?
Hairball.
What?
Hairball.
A hairball. Viam has found a hairball. Well, let us have a look at it. That is quite interesting, actually. So, Itch, I will talk to your point now. I'm just going to jump out and grab this hairball, which probably did come from a leopard. I don't see any tracks around here. Right, so it's not only hair here, it is a whole lot of hair, and there's also some bone fragment. And this, it might not have come from a leopard actually, I think it may well have come from a hyena. I don't know if you were on drive yesterday morning, but Andrew and I managed to find a pile of hair like this with a few more bones in it, but it had just been regurgitated, and there were a whole lot of hyena tracks around it, and it had very clearly just been vomited up by a hyena feeling a little queasy, and it certainly left me feeling a bit queasy, and I think that's what this is. I don't think it's a leopard. The leopards certainly would more than likely lick off the fur. Sometimes they swallow it and they do produce hairballs, but I don't think quite as large as that. And they lick off the fur and then sort of spit it out. Whereas the hyenas will come in and grab a whole pelage, swallow it whole, and then kind of the digestive system separates out what's edible and what isn't. They will digest some, I imagine. But I'm guessing that that's probably a hyena, especially based on what we saw yesterday with the hyena tracks right next to the dung. So, Itch, back onto your plants. There are a number of plants which do smell a little bit like rotting meat. The most obvious is something called a hoodia plant, or carrion plant, and it smells just like rancid meat, and that's because it is pollinated by blowflies. And there's a number of others. The red spike thorn, for example, smells pretty rank when it comes into bloom. And the most obvious or most common example around here is this tree right here. And that's the silver cluster leaf. And when the silver cluster leaf starts to flower, it smells like really disgusting feet. Really foul feet. In fact, to the extent that you've got to hold your breath when you drive through the little groves of them for the time in spring when they are flowering. It is foul. That is the silver cluster leaf, an otherwise very beautiful tree. And a question from our resident Twitter comedian, Kachino John. How many species of hairball are there on Djuma? Kachino John? I don't know. I suppose we get leopard hairballs, hyena hairballs, perhaps lion hairballs, serval hairballs, civet hairballs. Let's go with around 10. Thank you, John. See what else we can find in this area here. Whoop, sorry about that, Viam.
Okay.
Sorry about those of you who perhaps spilt a drink. There's some zebra, good heavens, streaming across the plains. Let's have a quick look here. Try not to frighten them off. Great view, but we'll get a bit of a view of them. Little kinship group of zebra. In a kinship group being a stallion and his harem and his youngsters. Now, a little while back, of course, we saw a tremendously difficult incident where a foal we had to watch being killed by a stallion, probably from another kinship group, and that was a dreadfully kind of emotionally heart-wrenching episode. And today I believe Scott saw some stallions fighting with each other, and so the zebras are quite aggressive with each other especially. Now, I must say I haven't looked at them the same way since the incident of that foal being killed. There's a whole lot of crested francolins calling there. Zebra in Shangwan is mangwa. One mangwa, many timangwa, as far as I remember. And in Zulu, idube. I love that word, idube. One zebra, many zebras, amadube. And that cacophony of noise that you can hear from next to us is a covey of crested francolins that are yelling at each other. That is VM attempting the focus pull, a well-known and well-received filming technique. And the one thing you'll notice about these zebra, more than any other animal out here, is that they don't seem to get thin in the wintertime at all. And that's not because they necessarily don't feel nutritional stress. What it is because they have what we call hind gut fermenters, which means that in their digestive systems is something called a cecum. Now, a cecum is basically the enlarged version of what we call an appendix, and that fills up with bacteria, which is what they use to digest the almost indigestible lignin and cellulose in the grass that they eat. Oh, shut up, Franklin. Thank you. I'm trying to speak. And the cecum, filled with bacteria as it is, then fills with gas as the grass is digested, and that gives the zebra that characteristically round belly, and it also gives them that characteristic propensity to flatulence when they run. And same with horses. Those of you who've ridden horses or who have seen horses will know that they tend to flatulate quite a lot when they run, and zebra are exactly the same, and that's because in the hind gut is this great big kind of ball of bacteria and gases. So that's why they always look fat. Now the key to a nutritionally deficient zebra is to look at its mane. When their manes lie down, they reckon that is when you can tell that they're under some kind of nutritional stress. And all of these manes look pretty much standing up straight, so I think they're all in pretty healthy condition, which is good. And you wouldn't expect it. Walking through here, you'd think, well, there's nothing for them to eat. And it is remarkable that their digestions are able to deal with such an incredible kind of seemingly dry and nutrient-free area. We'll just have one more look at them, and then we'll move on slowly. Very angry crested francolins. No, that was not the best view in the world, I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm just going to ease back slightly, and there's a little bit of a bird party with a whole lot of white-crowned shrikes. I don't know if they aren't eating, and some hornbills, and I don't know if they aren't eating some kind of termite emergence. See them all there. I'll just stop here. I think they'll come back. There's one on the bush there, on the top. That's him there. And there are a whole lot more coming onto the ground. There's a hornbill on the ground below there. That's it. That's the white-crowned shrike. There were 3 or 4 of them on the ground here. It looked like a couple of cisticolas as well. And also there's a hornbill just below that, picking things off the ground. So I wonder if there aren't some termites coming out. There he is. Watch him as he picks, and then he tosses his head back to throw whatever he's eating into his mouth. And the fact that he's eating from the same place like that tells me that there's something coming out of the ground there. And as he's standing on a termite mound, it don't take Sherlock Holmes to figure out what he's eating. That's the yellow-billed hornbill, for obvious reasons. There comes the other shrike. Yeah, on the top of the termite mound there. Now again, there we go. Now eating. There's a crested barbet coming in. There he is. Isn't this amazing? So and the hornbills got very, very upset. That's really cool. I think there'll be plenty to go around. That is the chastened white-crowned shrike there, licking his wounds and on the edge of that marula tree. And down he goes to see if he can get some more. Now, I was just saying the other day about a number of the birds here that despite the fact that their beaks are designed for various different things, just about all birds will take the time out to eat insects when they can, because they're so rich in fat, which is the best kind of thing to be burning if you're using a lot of energy. So that's why that barbet, which is normally a fruit eater, would be hopping around chancing war with a hornbill in order to get some termites, especially as there's no fruit around at the moment. There's another hornbill coming in from the left there, Vilm. I think he's going around the other side there, don't worry about him. And there he is. And with another shrike just above him. fascinated to know what they're eating. But I don't want to go in there and frighten them off. I just want to sit here for another 2 minutes and see if some other bird species don't come in. Here come those screaming franklins. They're coming in here now as well. You just see them to the left there again. Just where that shrike landed. There they come. You see them there? That's a flycatcher that's sitting above them. I'm just going to look what kind of flycatcher. It must probably a dusky flycatcher. Yeah, it's certainly what used to be called a dusky flycatcher. Well done, William. And there is the loud, comically idiotic crested franklin as it's coming in to grab its share of the termites and rushing away in a panic. Thank you, Valerie, for your comment about whether I can't tell from your comment if you think the franklin's boss or I am. I think the franklin is, to be honest. So I'm telling it who's boss. Thank you, Valerie. So we've got 3 or 4 species. We've got crested franklin, yellow-billed hornbill, crested barbet, white-crowned shrike, dusky flycatcher. And I can hear an oxpecker, but that's sitting off on the zebras. That is the crested franklin in picture with his cousin, the white-crowned shrike. And just notice how the franklins are not chasing off the shrikes like the hornbill was. I think that's quite interesting, although the shrike is very nervous. Obviously knows something that we don't.
From what I...
No, not a dusky flycatcher, sorry, I'm talking nonsense. It's a pallid or pale flycatcher. Pallid or pale flycatcher. They're all rather similar. Jan's just giggling because every time he gets onto the bird it moves. That rasping sound you can hear is the oxpeckers all over the zebras. Thank you, Joan and Martha, for your comments that the increase in hairballs, the species count could definitely be increased by counting the owls and the raptors that spit up hairballs and things. Good point. We just had some starlings and some drongos coming in too. So that's quite interesting. Lovely little sighting here. Right, we're going to head across to Brent, who is having some good luck with all the predators this evening. And he's currently looking at a misi. Misi Minzongo, a small, I'm not going to tell you what it is. We'll head across to him and you can see it for yourself. Sounds like a wonderful sighting, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. as you can see, I know Scotty did come check here this morning, so I thought possibly if they weren't there this morning, it might be worth our while coming to check the hyena den. And here we have a wonderful little hyena suckling from mom. And to keep up with the Shangaan, hyena is a mnisi. So we're at the kaya of the mnisis, or as a lot you might hear on the radio, mnisi kaya, which means hyena den or home of the hyena. Not quite correct proper Shangaan, but sort of get by game drive radio Shangaan. And keeping with the languages, hyena is one of those interesting animals that the name in many different African languages is always very similar. So here in the Lowveld in the Shangaan territory, it's Mnisi. If you go to Zululand, Zulu country, it's Impisi. If you go to Tswana country, it's Fisi. So very, very similar. Peeking out from the toes. That's one of the ways when we're tracking we discern hyena tracks, is the fact that the claws are sticking out. Also you can see the slightly lopsided shape in comparison to a lion or a leopard, which is far more symmetrical and has those three little lobes at the back, while hyena only has two, and they're very often not symmetrical at all. So, I mean, even in the last couple of days since we first found this hyena den, you can see how much more of the grass has been moved away as they utilize it more. And if we go zoom out there, what do you think, Brian? It definitely looks a lot more defoliated than it was 3 days ago, 4 days ago when we first came here. No, well, no, it can't be. 3 days ago, Sunday. And also, fortunately, every time we come in, it becomes a little bit easier, because the first time trying to get in here was really, really difficult. But we've now found our path. The last time you guys were here with me, they were lying on the other side of the den, next to the other holes. And today they're on the southern side of the den, almost. Yes, southern side of the den. Last time they were on the northern and western side of the den. And if we look at mom's ears, you see they're constantly flicking, trying to get rid of those biting flies, and you can actually see the little wounds caused by those biting flies on the tips of her ears. So a little bit earlier when we bumped into Peter, one of the other guides from the east, and he told me there was a big Madoda Ingwe, a big male leopard at their property. Unfortunately, it's not a property we are able to traverse, and he told me it was Shavambalan. And I threw it back at you guys to say, well, I think it was one of Karula's boys, but I'm not 100% sure. And now I have the information coming back to me that it is definitely one of Karula's boys. And thank you to Churchill and Arcadia and Skipper. And thanks very much for that. And they told me born in 2010, Alitimate to Shavinzi, and it was named by Mark Wiener, who was a guide here as well. So thanks very much for that. Hopefully one day I'll get to see Shivambalan and sort of fill in another little gap in the Karula family tree. But thanks very much for that, guys. We really do appreciate it. Some of you guys have been watching for so long, and you've gathered such a long and fantastic history of these animals that we often need your help to try to figure out what's going on sometimes. So we really do appreciate it. Well, these hyenas are still not doing much. Still think it's worth sitting here for a little bit longer in case another hyena happens to arrive and we start. And she keeps lifting her head to see if she can hear something. So I'm hoping maybe another hyena arrives and there might be some interaction. There's the possibility that she might get tired of the little guy suckling as well and decide to push it off. Speaking of how good you guys are at reminding us about stuff, James and I were both trying to remember how old this little guy is. When was the first time we saw him? I'm guessing he's probably must be around 3 to 4 months old now. And if any of you guys can remember the exact first day we saw him, I'd really appreciate you guys letting me know. And you can do that by emailing us on questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Very contented little hyena family with both baby and mom looking very well fed. Now what we've got, it's quite nice to actually have a look at a hyena while it's stationary like this. Quite often we see them there on the move, off out scavenging or hunting or harassing leopards and lions. And I know some of you guys might have heard about that incredible update from just to the west of our Traverse area, where hyenas chased the Nkahuma pride off their buffalo kill. As we're looking at a predominantly nocturnal species here, Genevieve in New York is wondering, does the full moon actually have any effect on animals' behavior? Genevieve, it most definitely does. It is actually harder for animals to hunt during the full moon, or the predatory species, because the prey species are able to see that little bit better, which makes quite a big difference. So as we've got a chance now to look at this hyena while she's not moving, we can zoom in on her head, please, Brian. And you can see how massive those muscles are around her neck and head, and also because of their slanted back, they have that incredibly massive front portion of their body with a smaller back portion. And you can't really see it there, but right in between her ears is what we would call... Oh, I just had gone completely blank for a second, so I'm sorry about that. There we go. A supra-optical crest, and that is a sort of enlarged area of bone above the optical or orbital area where the eyes are, that enables them to attach large tendons and muscles to that to give them that power. And one of the wonderful things about this book I have here that I've been paging through quickly is that we do have pictures of their skulls. And I mean, of an adult female spotted hyena, if you take away all the brain matter, sinuses, meat, sinew, all that type of stuff. So a clean skull, just the teeth and skull, can weigh up to 3 kilograms. So let me try work that out in pounds for you. I think 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds more or less. So we're looking at just under 7 pounds. And that's just the skull. Nothing else, none of the meat or anything on that. And you can see, I'll get Brian to show you shortly what I'm talking about and how their jaw structure is quite different, and their teeth, even if you look at other carnivores, are a little bit different. I mean, they do have those monster incisors and canines, and the incisors there up in the front, and we'll have a look now, are much, much larger than, say, for example, a lion's. And if you look at the canines and the premolars and molars, they are of similar shape, but they are far more robust and bigger. And that gives them that power to crush. Oh, let me go quickly. Sorry, Brian. There's a little bit of tenderness happening next to us here. And little guy's defleeing himself and he's getting the odd lick from Mom. A bit of a clean. Bath time after dinner. We might get lucky while Mom's giving him a clean. Instead of looking at a picture in the book, we might be able to see that impressive dental work of a spotted hyena. So thank you very much to Raisa. He said the first time we saw this particular youngster was on the 2nd of July. So that's about 3 months, I would guess. Because remember, they will stay under the ground for a bit in the beginning before coming out. So I would guess about three months old at the moment. And at 4 months, we'll probably start seeing a lot more of those spots that the hyena are named after, the spotted hyena. And you can already start seeing some of those spots come out at the moment at about 3 months. So about 4 months to 5 months, it's going to lose a lot of that black coloring that it's got, and will start looking more and more like possibly just not as cute as they get bigger. They are just so sweet when they are black and like this. Oh, it looks like he's really enjoying that, lifting the legs so Mom can get in there. We're just getting a glimpse every now and then of those incredible teeth of a hyena. Oh, she's giving him a very vigorous clean today. Very, 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 and look, just made himself dirty again. Like all children, as soon as you give it a clean, just gets dirty again. So we did happen to watch some wonderful suckling a little bit earlier. And Ignatius from Pretoria, welcome on the Sunset Safari, Ignatius, was wondering, is this hyena suckling off its mother, or could it just be a babysitter? Well, Ignatius, it is 110% its mom. Hyenas, unlike lions, do not share suckling amongst adults. The baby will only suckle from its mother, and she will not tolerate other baby hyenas suckling from her. So this cub is definitely with mom and not a babysitter. Looks like he's really enjoying that cleaning. So we're going to stick around here at the hyena den to see if anything else happens apart from this cleaning. But we're going to cross across to James, who has Zignoni. Ja, cool. At the Juma waterhole.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, and we're sitting here at Gowrie Waterhole where the sky has turned a magnificent shade of 100 different sunset colours, and there we have a flock of Maribou storks. Remember, I referred to them as the ugliest birds in South Africa, and I believe that to be the case, especially the junior ones. Now Viam, there's a youngster, the closest bird to us is an immature, and he's got a kind of fluffy white head. Not so white anymore. And it's not white, of course, because it's been in the mud. Now, I believe my colleague Brent is, well, two things. Firstly, he apparently told you the Shangaan word for a Maribou stork, and I don't know what that is. That's very interesting. I shall have to ask him when we get back home. And secondly, I believe he was telling you about the Little Five, and Lady Macbeth, obviously not the original, would like to know what the Ugly Five are, and apparently you say the Maribou stork is one of the Ugly Five. Well, I don't know that that's I didn't know there was an Ugly Five, and certainly I can't think of 5 particularly ugly things out here. Can you, Viam? The Maribou stork certainly would top my list of well, less than beautiful, but even that's a stretch. I suppose a catfish isn't particularly attractive. And that, of course, is what these Maribou storks are doing here at Gowrie Waterhole, or Juma Dam, depending on what you like to call it. There are a whole lot of catfish boiling in the last of the water here. And that's basically what these Maribous have come to find. And they've been circling around probably for a couple of days, and they've spotted this, or smelt this boiling cauldron of catfish. And that's what they're now trying to get at to eat. It does look a bit like a lava pit with a beautiful sunset shining on it, and of course Lady Macbeth will be well sort of versed in a boiling cauldron from the Three Witches. Double bubble, toil and trouble, I think it went, did it, Viam?
Cauldron, burn, something, yeah.
Something bubble.
Yeah.
There we go. That was a nice rounding off of Shakespeare. Well, I'm not sure the Maribou stork ever featured too highly in the Bard's plays. Alright, now from the ugly to the beautiful, we're going to go back to the Misnyana, the little hyena with Brent, and I'll see you just now.
So, after his preening session with Mom, this little chap has decided to come investigate us a bit closer. So he's no more than 2 meters from the vehicle at the moment. And he was smelling some elephant dung. And we can see the edge of the vehicle there. So as he gets older, or she gets older, they're going to get quite a bit more brave. And hyenas a little bit older than this are great thieves of Land Rover hubcaps. And you've got to keep a close eye on your vehicle around a hyena den. And you can see how full that little belly is. Must have drunk a gallon of milk. And you can see those battered ears now. So, oh, incoming. We've got another hyena coming in, just to the right. It looks like possibly one of the other sub-adults now that are probably 6-7 months old. So we could get a bit of gamemanship. And coming in just to the right a shot. There we go. What trouble have you been causing somewhere, you? Oh, he's going to get hiding. So even though the fact that the little one coming in did absolutely nothing wrong, the fact that the smaller one got a fright meant that Mom would have given that other one a hiding. And now this comes down to very interesting hyena behavior we're witnessing here. So even though this youngster is obviously much physically smaller, definitely more high ranking in the clan. So the elder one is showing submissive behavior to this youngster. Head down, offering the genitalia for a sniff is very, very distinct submissive behavior in hyenas. Now, this is about the age I was warning you about, that they do become great nippers of little rubber hubcaps that keep our wheels nice and lubricated. Toward that branch. And you'll often notice, and it's going to be quite interesting if they do spend a lot of time at this den. Oh, and another adult coming in. And the youngster's not so sure about that adult. And we have seen some fascinating behavior. Another one coming in. Well, there we go. That's Mom to one of those sub-adults. And both of them are subordinate to that tiny little black guy. And we could see that very, very clearly. There's no way as a higher ranking hyena would have let that little black guy run around between its legs like that. It definitely would have got a talking to. Oh, here we have a mischief maker on its way. Stay away from my tires. Well, at least it seems to be a well-disciplined hyena. And there we go, there's that submissive behavior again. The sub-adult lifting its leg, exposing its genitalia. I know it's behind a bush, but we can just make it out to the tiny little one. And now the little one is pasting. So scent marking using its anal gland. And that is one of the ways hyenas mark their territory. So their territory will be established with these scent marks and also with vocalizations, and that's to let the next opposition clan of hyenas know that they are entering this particular clan's territory. So guys, I know trouble's on its way. See, it looks lovingly at my tires. I can just see it. It's trying to act innocent. I'm just sniffing this grass, but really all I want is that little rubber cap from your tire. I'm watching you. Yes. So this hyena is possibly less than a meter from the passenger door and my front tire. And we might even see a bit of bullying by the little one on the older one. There we go. Biting the back leg. And the submissive behavior being shown. If that sub-adult decided to try bite back, mom, who's fast asleep there, would react so quickly in giving the sub-adult a very stern lesson. So guys, what I've been thinking about for a while now, oh, another adult arriving. Since we spent so much time with this hyena clan, and they are very difficult to name individually like leopards, why don't you guys try figure out a good name for the hyena clan as a self, because we do spend so much time and they are definitely a main character that we deal with a lot here on Djuma. So why don't you guys see if you can come up with a good name, and preferably a Shangaan name for the hyena clan. And what we'll do is us, the presenters, we'll go through a few of those answers and see which one we should pick, or maybe we'll have a vote. But for now, I'd say just start sending a few names in to what we should call the Djuma hyena clan, and I need some creativity out there, guys. So you can do that and send your answers through via email to questions@wildearth.tv, or use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So having a look at those different sized hyenas, Peter from New Jersey is wondering how much does that little baby weigh? Peter, I'd probably guess it weighs about the same as a large Jack Russell, between 2 and 5 kilograms, depending on how much milk it's managed to consume. The next size up, that little sub-adult there to the right of Shot, to the left of Shot, probably 15 to 20 kilos. An adult, big adult female hyena like these girls here is probably weighing around 65, upward of 70 kilograms. When I was doing helping out on some predator research in northern Botswana with an NGO called APCO, Africa Predator Conservation Research Organization. It took me a long time to be able to say that in one breath. We actually darted and took blood samples and fecal samples from a female hyena who tipped the scales at 92 kilograms, which is about the same weight as me. She is definitely the biggest hyena I've ever seen. She did have a belly full of hippopotamus, so without that she probably would have weighed around 80 kilograms, which is still a monster hyena. So we chatted a little bit earlier briefly when we watched that tiny little fella, I'm not sure whether it's a guy or a girl just yet, suckling on mom. And Eric from Idaho is wondering what would happen if that female died. And because hyenas don't have communal nursing, would that baby be doomed? Unfortunately, Eric, I think at that age, yes. These little two scallywags we see wandering around closest to us now are probably eating quite a lot of meat, but they are still suckling. And hyenas are strangely enough very very dependent on their mothers till they are over a year old. Oh, trouble. So unfortunately, I don't think you guys would have been able to pick that up, but that means there possibly could be another one on its way here. So we were discussing nocturnal hunting practices a bit earlier and whether the full moon makes a difference. Hello, Trouble. And the fact that this little guy is so brave already at this age definitely means it is one of the higher ranking individuals' cub. And you will notice that in terms of the hierarchy that the higher ranking individuals tend to become brave far quicker than the lower ranking individuals. And he's now coming very close. And is he going to make an early shot at tire biting? I'm watching you, mister. Now, it's very important for us not to move too quickly when a young animal like this is close to the vehicle. Obviously, we don't want them to get any negative connotations from the vehicles. So we want them to be relaxed around the vehicles. And with hyenas, they are particularly curious. So he's actually giving us a good sniff right now as I'm sort of leering over the edge, looking at him. Hello, mister. Or Mrs. And also the fact that they're coming this close, and I can't be sure, but I think it's probably a young female. Going to sniff Brian next. Oh. I haven't quite finished investigating us yet. Definitely seems to like Brian. Brian, did you shower today?
I did indeed.
Oh, maybe he likes the smell of your shampoo. Isn't this an absolutely amazing sighting we're having? And we're so privileged to live our lives alongside these incredible animals out here in the bush. Sorry, Genevieve, back to your question about nocturnal hunting strategies. Genevieve was asked initially whether full moon played a part in changing animals' hunting strategies, and it does make it more difficult for the predators during full moon because the prey species have more light to work with, so better sight on those full moon nights. Her next follow-up question on that was whether I know of any animals, apart from domestic ones or predators, that have swapped from being nocturnal to diurnal. Genevieve, if we look into the history of something like a cheetah, it probably at one stage was more nocturnal and has developed diurnal. I don't think it's something that would happen overnight. It would happen over hundreds of thousands, up to millions of years in certain circumstances, and especially in a place like Africa, where you find evolution happening in very quick terms is generally on small isolated islands like the Galapagos, and that evolution is sped up due to a very small area. So you would probably find it's possible that an animal like a cheetah was possibly nocturnal at one stage in its life and has now become diurnal due to the adaptations it made for speed. And so it would have then adapted to be more diurnal to avoid the other predators. But then again, a cheetah might have always been diurnal, and I don't know. But it is a very interesting question and definitely something to ponder. Because as it gets a bit darker, I know sometimes with the camera it can be a bit difficult. I'm not going to turn any lights on as this youngster is below 6 months old, and I'm probably going to move away quite shortly. We don't want to have any lights and stuff around youngsters while they're developing, so we will be moving away quite regularly, but we will sit here without any lights for as long as possible. So we've seen quite a bit of dominance displays and whatnot going on with the hyenas here at the new hyena den. And BJ is wondering, how do we know that how does that little hyena know that it's dominant over the others? Well, it'll probably learn from its mother. And even if you look at the dominant animals, they're generally bigger, more aggressive. And in this case, with female hyenas, they have probably a higher testosterone level. And a very interesting thing about social hierarchy in hyenas is it is matriarchal. They're probably the only truly matriarchal out of the large predators. And the males are physically smaller and very much subservient to the females. The lowest ranking female ranks higher than the highest ranking male. So the alpha male is lower than the lowest ranking female. And the females, very interestingly, have a very high level of testosterone, and that's what makes them bigger. They also have an enlarged clitoris, which looks very much like a penis. So in scientific terms, it's called a pseudo-penis. They also have pseudo-testes. So pseudo-testicles, which is an enlarged anal gland, which they do use for scent marking, which makes hyenas sometimes very difficult to sex. And up until the 1950s, a lot of people still considered hyenas hermaphrodites. That has obviously been debunked, and they're definitely male and females. It's just very interesting that hyenas have evolved this really complex social structure with females having very male-like attributes and being physically dominant over the actual males. And I'm quite sure that that little guy will have learned that behavior directly from mom. And I would say it's the same in people. Dominant people are always dominant, and even without even being taught, Some people are more dominant than others in situations. And I think a lot of those personality traits will probably be handed down from the higher ranking animals to them and then reinforced by the behavior of the mother around the den, beating up, etc. And if anyone gives that young baby any trouble, she'll immediately beat them, and then that baby will probably learn from that. But a really interesting question, and thanks very much for that. As it seems like they're all moving off a little bit, and can't see where all the mischief makers are. I think they're on the other side of the termite mound. And as it is getting quite dark, I'm going to leave. I'm going to take one more question and then we'll make our way out of this area. So we've had quite a few different ideas for the name of the clan. The Anthill Mob, the Gangsters, the Bendela, which means the gangsters in Afrikaans, and lots more, including Kata, that means laugh. All really good suggestions, guys, but we're not going to rush this. I think we will have to sit down and we'll go through your names, and then I think we'll choose a final 5, and then we'll put them through to you guys to vote for. So we're going to be very selective, and remember, we want to get as much creativity. If you can try use Shangaan words, do, or don't. But let's try get some really nice creative names for this clan we do spend so much time with. So guys, I am going to move away from these hyenas now. Oh, as I say that, another adult female's just arrived. So as we see those hyenas disappearing off in that direction, it's quite fitting because Jean was wondering how far is this hyena den away from the Juma camp. As the crow flies, Jean's probably less than 600 meters in that direction those hyenas were heading. But as we close off, I'm going to leave here before we have to put any lights on this den. Obviously, we want to be sensitive as possible around young animals. So thanks a lot for joining us on this sunset safari. Brian and I have had a fantastic time having you on our vehicle. And unfortunately, not the longest sighting of Sindile, but still a great one nonetheless. And an amazing time getting above some elephants on that termite mound and seeing them have a drink. And then what a fantastic finish with the hyena clan yet to be named, and I'm looking forward to getting back and going through a few more of those names. And remember, we will choose probably 5 of the best, and then we'll put them out there for you guys to vote on. So from Brian and myself and the unnamed clan, we hope to see you bright and early on the sunrise safari. It'll be James and Scott guiding you through that, and I'll be out on the tracking team. So wonderful as always to be out here, and have a fantastic rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world, and we will see you on the sunrise safari.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. Now for the last few minutes of this marvelous evening safari, we're just heading up onto quarantine clearings where we can have a good look at the last dying embers of the day. And while we're doing that, I thought I'd tell you a little story. We've had a sort of cultural day, and we've learnt all about some Shangaan and some Zulu, and Brent and I have been challenging each other. And I must compliment my erstwhile colleague Brent and friend Brent Leo Smith, who is he has a remarkable ability to remember little snippets of fascinating information and bits and pieces of languages. It really is quite incredible. So while we stop here and just let the dying embers of the day say goodbye to us. I'm sorry, Liam. Liam, you can just say it. You don't need to point wildly. He wants me to turn a little bit towards the sun. There we go. Is that all right? Yeah, quite ornery, old Liam. So the story goes as follows. It's quite a quick one. Obviously, there's a lot of inflection in the way local people speak out here, and there are lots of local guides, excellent Shangaan guides. And a friend of mine told me the story of when a tracker took his guests on a walk once, and he said to them when they got back, "What did you see on your walk?" And they said, "Well, it's odd, Alex, you know, but we saw a seagull." And Alex looked at them and he said, a seagull?" And they said, "Yeah, a seagull." And for many months this worried him until he came across the same tracker in a sighting pointing out a bird to his guests. And he was pointing at a bird, and it was called a Wahlberg's eagle. And because of the inflection in his accent, he said, "Look, it is a Wahlberg seagull." And that's why, if you want to see a seagull out here, it is in fact quite possible. So, we've had a wonderful afternoon. We haven't seen a huge amount of big game, as it were, but it has been just very special driving around in this kind of Liam is kind of a apocalyptic personality, but not quite apocalyptic light, but very interesting cloud. So thank you very much for all of your comments and all of your questions. I've had a wonderful time with the Shangaan. Thank you to Liam on camera today, and thank you of course to Brent and Brian on the other vehicle, and of course Tara and Kirsty in the final control. And we did actually spot Eugene twice driving around, fixing things, doing things well above my intellectual capacity. And so I leave you with a few more words of Shangaan. I think the best thing to say is that I wish you a good evening. Damna vela. I've forgotten what night is now. Anyway, I wish you... I've forgotten completely what night is. Anyway, I will say to you that Damna vela nhlahla. I wish for you the best of luck. Mita tsama kahle yindawo yiko. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are happy and seated in a very pleasant place. Well, that's a very vague sort of translation, what I was saying. And I will say, finally, that we will see you tomorrow. We will see you very early in the morning. Loko jambo, rahuma. When the sun comes up, and loko swihari, swirila, switela. The animals are around and they're calling and they're all over the place. And loko swinyanyana, the little birds, swikala, swirila, they call and make the morning as beautiful as it always is out here in wonderful Africa. So wherever you are in the world, stay well in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, wherever you find yourself. And we will see you tomorrow in the beautiful African dawn. Bye-bye, and thank you very much.